What is up, my European Pred obsessors? This is PCC EU Summer Prelims Day 2. My name, as you all know and can read below me, is Lance Cecil. I am joined here today by HD, Philly B, and my main man, Blue Jay Red Dojo Forever. How are you guys doing today?
Lance, I don't even wake up this early to go to my 9-to-5 job, but I am pumped for this Day 2 matchup versus Sin versus Team Immune.
And Blue Jay?
I mean, this is why we come in, right? It's the you could call it Championship Sunday, even though it's not really, but it feels like a Championship Sunday, right? With the teams that we have playing today. So just really excited to get into the games. These are all amazing teams.
We're going to consider qualifying Sunday because we have our bracket available for you here. We are getting close to crowning our 4 teams that are going to be participating in the main event July 13th. Here in the winner's bracket, we still have Black Lotus, Veni Ven's Many Men, Team Sin, and Team Immune. We will be focusing on this bottom set here for our first series of the day between Team Sin and Team Immune, which, if you have been following the EU predecessor scene for any amount of time, you know these are 2 very heavy hitters.
Lance, these are some of the most storied squads, have some of the most named players. These are household names in terms of EU, any predecessor tournament. Really, you're talking about import, you're talking about NEF. These 2 are going to be locking horns here today, and that is just the surface of the depth these squads have.
Yeah, you know, we saw Immune playing last weekend in the North American qualifiers, right? So this Team Immune team has a lot of practice under their belt coming into this tournament, and obviously the team over on the side of Sin has a lot of household names that played even in the days of Paragon, you know. So they've been around for a long time and have a lot of chemistry with each other. So this match is going to be very interesting because both these teams have a lot of strategy involved with their play and a lot of chemistry going on together. So it's going to be really cool to see 2 teams that have so much playing together going at it.
And my 2 favorite ADCs in the European scene are in this series right here. Everybody knows about Neff, but we also have 2 hands up here on the side of Team Sin. 2 hands very impressive yesterday with the way that he was playing, the way that he was performing. And it's just, I think it's going to be quite the matchup. Philly, is there any other matchup or kind of spot within these 2 teams that you're looking or interested in?
Oh, absolutely. I'm talking about Import versus Conte. Conte, the Italian jungler, so I got to support him all the way. But those 2 have such good styles about their pace of play in the jungle. And for me, it's going to be, how does Conte keep Import under wraps? It's not like he's can win it, but he has to make sure that Import can't have as much impact as he usually does in these matches.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the jungle just like you are, Philly, and then also the mid lane. Import's someone who loves to play through mid lane, and that's something that Team Immune I know doesn't do as much. They usually like to more focus on the dual lane side of the map, getting good vision, stacking Fang Tooths, properly team fighting. So it's going to be a little interesting to see the different components of this match, because we have one team that really likes to push the pressure in the team of Sin of what I've seen, and then we have Team Immune, which really strategizes and plans on team fighting really well.
That is true, and our draft is ready for this very first game of the day, and I am very curious how this is going to shape up. I think that between these 2 teams, they know each other incredibly well. They know the strengths and weaknesses of each other, as we were kind of highlighting here within the desk. We might not see the same bans and picks that we've seen within our other series. Philly, are we going to see anything surprising in the early rotations of bans here?
That's a really good question, my friend. We might see some differentiation in terms of the ADC, just based on yesterday. I mean, 2 hands only played Grim and Kira, so maybe the Revenant not really on the board for one of these squads. So we might see that, but right now we're seeing the Steel, which makes a lot of sense. Both Penguin and Brandon Knight, which will probably be on the support, can play this character really well. Tank supports are kind of in right now, so getting one of the best off the board makes sense.
Yeah, and we've seen Steel coming out on the 2-3 side of the picks regularly, so it makes sense that Sin on the side of the first pick is going to ban that, because they're probably going to be prioritizing something different on their side. And Penguin just is a monster at playing the Steel, so he's played it in a lot of matches. He was playing it in the North American qualifiers, and just the team looks a lot different when you're on a commanding support like the Steel. Like you said, the Wukong gets banned out over here. It's a very standard side 2 ban, because it is just very flexible into the jungle, into the offlane as well. On the Sin side, we do know their offlaner does like to play the Wukong as well, and the Seraph getting banned out for Conte here. This has been a regular banned character, the Seraph, because it is just very, very strong, and if it starts snowballing, it's very, very hard to play against as pretty much any character in the game.
Very
Absolutely. Go ahead, Lance.
Very low interaction when she gets that Ashbringer online. I expect to see Seraph continuously banned for the rest of the day.
Absolutely. Her win rate is insane. Currently 100% over the 2 games that she finally made it through, with a ban count of 25. So absolutely nuts. The Wukong, though, I do want to touch on. Penguin actually played Wukong support 2 games yesterday. So maybe they saw something and they're like, okay, we don't want to do any of that. Also an incredibly high win rate for the Wukong, 80% as well. But then we're seeing the Richter, another kind of beefy, tanky support, being taken off the board. Usually you combine that with a Sparrow as well, or Rev. So makes sense to get the Warden off the board here.
Yeah, and then we see Rampage coming in with the first pick. That's one of the few first picks that you can take. It can deflex into the off lane or get played in the jungle. We've seen it mainly being played in the jungle as kind of that Tiny Terror augment. Team Immune has a few things. The Revenant, there's the Revenant right there. The Revenant +1, we can look at a Morn, a Greystone that comes in right now. And now it kind of opens up the draft a little bit, because you're kind of seeing these compositions starting to unfold. Sin can either take like an early gadget, an early mid laner to kind of counteract the pressure that Greystone gives, or in my opinion, they should probably lock their dual lane in to kind of face the Revenant, because it's such a force. So they could lock a Sparrow Morn, they could do, something that's going to keep this Revenant at bay, instead of getting it banned out on the second set of bans.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see them go Sparrow here either, especially with that Steel ban, the wall not there to be able to be like one of the main counters for Sparrow. But I just want to go back to this Revenant pick. I haven't seen Neft play Revenant since like PCC 2, at least not in a competitive spot, and I am stoked because he dominated PCC 2 with this Revenant pick.
And just with how strong the Revenant is now, we can see hopefully he'll dominate again. We'll just have to pick a support to pair with it. On the other side, though, Sin, they're picking up the Countess. That's going to go for M in the off lane. M, not normally known for his tank kind of off lane play. So Countess, that's a lock in. I was curious to see how they would prioritize which characters in the draft. So they're definitely locking down their jungle and their offlane first, knowing that Import likes to also play through that offlane side, which will then also open up Neft in the dual lane. But we pick up the Sparrow, and then we move over to the Gideon on the other side, Blue Jay.
Yeah, no, Gideon comes out, just a very standard pick, right? There's only 1 or 2 things that can take him out of the air right now. I know that Manq really likes his Gideon in the mid lane. That's something that he would even bring out when he was playing in the support role, was he'd play Gideon support, Howitzer support. So he really likes playing those kind of artillery mages. And we see the Belica getting hit. This hits the support pool and the mid lane pool. So I don't really, it's not too big of a shock that they're banning this out. I maybe was going to consider a support ban just to kind of hit that pool a little bit extra. But yeah, the Belica comes out as a ban on the side of Team Immune.
Belica pretty good into Gideon right now, has that silence to be able to disrupt the black hole. Aurora is going to be the ban, and I believe that is pretty targeted towards Conte on the side of Team Immune, kind of known for like setting the meta as far as how it goes with Aurora. Found a bunch of the angles, a bunch of the ways to get over the walls. So trying to take some of the comfort away from Conte, but that Zarus is still available if they want to go that direction.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I feel like Conte, they'll probably pick his character last, knowing that the Rampage is probably going to go on to Import. So what is going to facilitate Conte to once again keep Import under wraps so that way Neft can succeed? It's like a 4 protect 1 style for Team Immune, and it will be the Kwang. We've seen him mainly in the off lane, pretty proficient in the jungle as well, but that adds a little extra flexibility to this draft here.
Yeah, and Team Immune has swapped those characters around a bunch. It really depends on the matchup, which is why they're such a flexible team in general. So they can kind of wait, see what facilitates. They think they know this Countess is going to go into the off lane, which makes me think, that that their offlaner is going to get their pick of the litter when it comes to this, but they're kind of just holding that last pick for support to see. We have seen some Kwong support as well, so that's not completely out of the books. But the Morn coming over like we thought, and then the Iggy getting picked. One of the first times that Iggy's gotten picked here on the cast, even though it's gone through a lot of the banning phase, whereas we saw in the North American Cup that it actually was getting banned out almost every single game. So I'm very excited to see this Sin draft. It looks really, really hard for the side of Team Immune to kind of run into this team. So I really like what Sin has drafted so far in this game.
I got to keep it a buck here. This is just my personal opinion, so don't at me about this. I hate that they just picked Iggy into a Gideon. That is a very, very tough matchup to play for them. I believe maybe they think that they've got like just the skill advantage there. But what I was going to say is that Kwang is going to be in the jungle because Morose does not play Kwang. So we picked the Feng Mao up on our last rotation to round the teams off. Philly, we've got 2 completed drafts from each team. How do you break down what we're seeing from them?
Lance, I think the Kwang's going to be support here, based on seeing the Greystone and the Feng Mao last pick. So Feng Mao potentially in the jungle because Conte loves playing Feng Mao in the jungle, and I love Feng Mao in the jungle because that facilitates him roaming the map, getting his passive passive online, getting those stacks, and really snowballing throughout the match. And getting pace in to the Rampage is going to be huge. So I'd be curious to see if he takes the augment that debuffs on hit, right? That 5%, and also buffs you for 5%, just to kind of duel and box in the jungle against the import. So I'm actually loving this draft here from Team Immune. Very creative.
Yeah, no, Team Immune comes out with a really good draft. I like the switch into Kwang support. I think it's a good engage into the Morn. Morn's E really does can counter the Kwang a little bit into this matchup. And if we're seeing a Spider Morn augment, then I think traversing the map is going to be quite easy for the side of Sin. I like both comps. I'm actually leaning a little bit towards the Sin comp just because I think the Sparrow Morn lane is really good. And I think the Iggy, when it comes to objective control with the Rampage, if they play it properly, will be able to set up. And then it's going to be kind of hard for the test side of Team Immune to kind of push into those corridors of the map. But Team Immune side over with the Gideon, the Feng Mao, and I'm mainly looking at the Revenant to kind of take the stage on Team Immune side if they're going to win. But I'm going to give it to Sin on a little bit of an edge basis.
Well, there you have it. We have a split desk. We've got 2 great compositions drafted out of this. The only thing to do next is to send it over to our casters so we can get into the first game of the day. Take it away, F6 and Tang. Thank you, F6 and Tang, for that wonderful analysis. Game 1, kind of lopsided, fellas. What did we see out of Team Immune that went so well for them?
Yeah, for me, it was that jungle play. I mean, the first blood there on Conte, and he turns this around, which is a crazy highlight. I'm glad we were grabbing it. So it got that passive going early. He could snowball, and it kept Import on the left side of the map towards that dual lane side. For Import also, a lot of these lanes were hard to gank. Even if you did connect to Rock, you have a lot of survivability, escapability on the heroes from Team Immune. So Import just kind of fell flat, and then when he fell behind, he couldn't get back, find his footing in the match.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, they're on the side of Sin. They're playing an Iggy comp that is detrimental to get control around the Fangtooth pits early, stacking early Fangtooths against the Feng Mao jungle, which you think the level 6 spike should be a little bit better for the Rampage playing that augment. But it just turns out when you have losing lanes for the first 10 minutes of the game, then it just is really hard to get that comp online and get into the game. So Conte did a great job, like you were saying. He kind of mirrored the Rampage around the map and was kind of following him on every step of the way, which is what you should be doing in this matchup. So he played it to perfection. And then we just saw Neft on the Revenant, right? It gets a few kills. It's just very hard to stick to that guy, especially when you're playing the Iggy comp, which is what you want people to run into you. But when you're not able to set up, then the Revenant just kind of goes wild because he doesn't have to walk into anything, right? He just is sitting there and kind of outputting damage freely.
All right, so let's change gears here and kind of focus on Team Sin there. What adjustments do we think that they need to make? What changes should we see going into game 2 if they're want to try to stay in the winner's bracket?
That's a good question. I think definitely the mid lane, because Iggy, very vulnerable, right? He can be dove on quite easily, and doesn't really have a lot of self-peel. Even when he does get the ultimate online, I mean, that's still a large cooldown. So I would say a change in the mid, And then probably import not on the Rampage. Let's do something else. He has a deep hero pool. I like the Crunch, the Terra there as well. Just something maybe with a little bit more impact. But then you also have to make sure that the lanes are gankable. So you have to prevent the other team from getting a lot of these heroes with the escape, like Gideon, like Greystone, etc. So definitely some draft adjustments there for Sin, but they have the quality and the depth to bring this all the way to game 3.
Yeah, I definitely would like to see a draft adjustment. Even if they don't, I kind of just want to see them playing a little bit more secure in the early game. I don't want to see them going off on too many tangents and taking that many risks, especially if they're going to draft a comp similar to this. I want them to focus on moving around with the more and getting good vision lines, setting up properly on Fang 2s 30 seconds, 40 seconds before. If I had to change anything in the draft for them, I would say let's keep ManQ off the Gideon. Let's get him on something that's maybe a little bit more passive in the lane. Let's get him on a gadget. Let's get him on, even a Howie that has to lay back a little bit more in the fights instead of being so aggressive with the Feng Mao. Because like you said, when you have so much mobility on the map on the side of Team Immune, it just gets hard to be able to lock down targets, to be able to put them inside of your Iggy turrets. So yeah, draft maybe a little bit more engaged. Maybe a Zarus comes out on the side, so you can cage in those targets and make them use those escape abilities to actually leave the Coliseum, and then you can re-engage on top of them. So yeah, just a little bit more draft tweaks, and then some more confidence in just playing around your comp.
Well, both of these teams have a couple of minutes to think about what kind of changes they would like to make, and so do you, but stick around because we'll be back in a couple of minutes with Game 2. Red Obsessors, we are back for Game 2 between Sin and Immune. We saw a pretty lopsided, I'm not gonna beat around the bush here, a pretty lopsided game for Game 1. I don't expect Game 2 to go the same way at all. There are a lot of big brain players on the side of Sin that are able to make these adjustments, have a lot of competitive experience in here. Where do we think those changes start, Philly?
Yeah, I was thinking about this myself during the break, and I think it's where you draft the certain players. So for Team Sin, they drafted their jungle and their offlane right away. Well, then that tells you where their two best players are going, and then you can kind of counterpick them. You saw for the side of Team Immune, they last picked their jungler with the Fang Mao, and then Conte was able to just run away with the game and snowball basically into Affinity. So I would like them to adjust maybe where they put their certain players. Maybe go for your support and mid first instead, and then kind of hide those picks later down the line so that you can counter what the other side wants to do.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying, Philly. I think it does start in the draft phase of the game. It starts with Sin building a comp that's maybe a little bit easier to execute and can be a little bit more aggressive in the early game if that's how they want to play it. I know they have some players who do like to get a little bit active, especially in that mid lane. So that's why I was a little surprised, like you were saying, Lance, that they drafted such a passive mid lane matchup when that's usually how they like to win through that lane. So I'm looking to get a very aggressive mid laner on the side of Sin with a jungler that can maybe be a little bit more active in that early game and kind of take control more. I also just kind of want to get Neft and ManQ off those two champions. Those are their signature champions, the Revenant and the Gideon. They kind of got everything they wanted when they got those two picks. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sin even jumps over to the second pick side here to maybe, try to squeeze out that Revenant pick, or maybe even ban it away and then get something else on the backside. I know first pick has been kind of dominant in these drafts lately, but we'll see what ends up happening.
I think that would be very interesting to see as well. We do have the draft ready, and I just want to add my own little 2 cents to here. I hope they put import on something that can carry the game. I think that import's the star player of Sin, although all of the members on the team are, very, very good players. I'm a big M fan as well. But import, the namesake, a lot of people consider him just the best jungler in the game. Let's get this man on something that can carry. And Steel coming out as the first ban.
Yeah, and we talked about why the Steel is so good, being whether you could put him in support, jungle, offlane, what have you. But those support beefy boys, that's kind of been the meta right now. Pairs really well and also counters the Sparrow. That's a point we didn't bring up, right? That wall can block the inner fire. We've seen him get the double wall augment. And then it's the monkey once again. I'm seeing deja vu here, Blue Jay.
Yeah, no, the bans are staying the same. In these second bans, it'll be interesting to see if it stays the same. I wouldn't be shocked if we see a Revenant ban coming on the side. Another Seraph, that's very interesting to me. In NA, we would see the Seraph getting through a little bit, and some teams would end up being able to play it in certain situations. but they're keeping it going here because obviously there's some scrim prep that they've had to see that the Seraph is obviously just taking over games when it can. What I'm really looking to see is this first pick coming out from the side of Sin, though. Are they going to stick with the Rampage, or are they going to pick up something different? I would expect them to pick up something different and play through, maybe they first pick the Revenant. The Kwang's also up to be able to pick. So there's a lot of picks that they can take that I think are just a little bit better than this Rampage that is coming out. And Richter gets banned away on the side of Team Immune. I think just sticking on the same with the ban so far.
Wow. Oh no, they went with the Rampage, Blue Jay. We might just be watching the same draft back from last time. We'll have to see with these next two picks that come out of Team Immune. But hey, there is the chance that goes over to M. So we'll see how she goes.
Yeah, I don't know. M not really known for playing Rampage in the off lane, so I think they're showing their hand once again. They're really diving into this Rampage in the jungle. But like we were talking about in the green room, guys, when you build him a certain way with augmentation, then with Ashbringer, etc., he doesn't have a lot of that beef ability that he normally has. So you feel like you can take him down. He is counterable. He is vulnerable. Then we're seeing the Revenant and the Greystone. It's the same two picks. It's going to be Neff on that character, and then it's going to be Morose on the Greystone once again.
Yeah, and Team Immune is basically just saying like, oh, if we're just going to run the same thing until you force us to change something in our draft, right? Which is a completely correct strategy, right? The Greystone's a very viable option. It's very strong in the off lane right now. The jungle can be played as well if you really want to flip that off lane matchup on its head. And the next two picks from Sin, I'm expecting. We'll see. Okay, so they take the Feng Ma away from Conte. One of the main counters. This can be a switch up. I think it's probably going to go into the jungle, but we can take a look. The Sparrow picked up, obviously, because that's kind of the counter over to Rev, right? If one team has Rev, the other team generally is going to have Sparrow right now. That's the consensus on the meta. And then Team Immune, we'll see what they come back with. But I do like that they changed up and took the Feng Ma away from Conte. We'll see if Team Immune wants to pick up a jungle pick now, maybe a Zarus, maybe an Aurora to kind of counteract that, or if they want to stick just put Manq on his signature Gideon pick again and kind of roll back a similar comp.
I would be expecting them to go comfort here as well, Blue Jay. I'd be kind of surprised if the Gideon doesn't get locked in, and there is that Space Wizard. So we're going to move into our next phase of bans. What do you think they're going to take off the table here, Philly?
Well, the supports are still needed from both sides. So maybe the Morn, right? Because Morn works both well into the Sparrow and the Revenant. Maybe the Bellica as well. Yep, we're seeing the Bellica because that can go mid lane for Sin or for support. So it's a nice flexible ban, can cover a lot of options. So yeah, definitely liking that. But I'm thinking probably going to be a support for Sin on the other side as well.
Yeah, no, you might see the Kwang ban come out if they thought that was oppressive, but they take out the Aurora. They're obviously targeting Conte here, which that leaves the Kwang open for taking still, which is a very strong pick. Coming into the tournament, Kwang was getting picked a lot in scrims very early on as a very high prio pick, and it's actually getting through the second ban phase in a lot of these drafts, which is very interesting to me. That's obviously open for the side of Penguin again if they want to run it back. I do like the Morn pairing with on the Sin side again, but we see the Kwang coming out on the side of Team Immune again, which is no shocker. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? They're just kind of running back the comp, which is a very stable, very, very good comp, and they kind of have everything that they want on the side of Team Immune again.
I'm going to keep it real. Sin's got two more picks coming in, but if Team Immune slams Zarus with their last pick like they are able to do, like right now currently with us seeing the Kwang in the support role in the last game, their composition is like essentially perfect. So Sin's going to have a pretty decent answer here. I really hope they don't go this route of the Iggy. I'd like to see the Gadget come out to be kind of a more natural counter to this Gideon. But we'll get the Argus, which is also a pretty good matchup into the Gideon. Has that way to stop the Black Hole and the Decker. So some long-range CC, lots of ways to stop this Black Hole if they need it.
Yeah, it's always good to, we've seen this composition before with the Rampage, the Argus, and the Decker. It's called the ball comp, at least in my opinion. You're just chucking everything, all the projectiles in the world to try to stave off the advance, make sure the dive doesn't come through. So I really like that. But now I'm curious here for Conte's last pick. He likes those high tempo heroes. We might see the Boris. We might even see the Chimera. We could see the Zarus, which will probably be what it is. But I mean, his hero pool has so much depth to it. There's so many options. And there's the Zarus. Easy as you like.
Yeah, Zarus, like you guys were saying, was the pretty obvious pick here, pairing well with the Gideon in this matchup. What I do like from the side of Sin, a little bit change up, is that they do have setup in lanes now, kind of like you were saying before, Philly, right? They do have the Argus stun, they have the Decker stun and the Cage to be able to make ganks a little bit easier for this Rampage or this Fang Mao to come in. We still don't know where it's going. I would assume the Rampage is probably going to the jungle since you know, M doesn't have a match history of usually playing that. And I think Argus is something that Shin is very comfortable on. I still really like Team Immune's draft. I think they got everything they wanted, and I think they even paired it with maybe even a little bit better setup of a jungler when it comes to using that Zar's Cage in team fights on top of the Gideon ulti. I think Team Immune got everything they wanted, but I think Sin changed it up a little bit to where it could make things interesting.
Well, there you have it. Our experts have given what they think is going to happen. Will Sin be able to pull us to a game 3, or will Team Immune cruise their way into the next round of winners bracket? There's only one way to find out. Let's get down onto the Sanctuary. Thank you very much, F6 and Tang. Before we jump into what went well for Team Immune there, I just have to tell everybody to get ready for Kwong support in your solo queue games. Philly, what did we see there?
I mean, Tang summed it up really nicely. It's Team Immune does that 4 protect 1 style. And when you have 4 characters that can just dive on anybody, that causes so much confusion, so much chaos for the opposite team. Who do we focus? Who do we stun? You got 3 stuns, but 4 people that need the stuns. They need the lockdown. So it's just the math is not mathing, and that leads to Neff just free firing in the background. I think he had, 3 or 4 triple kills in this game. That guy was just unstoppable, but it's because his team facilitates him to do so.
Yeah, and we just kind of saw the comps playing out how we kind of thought they would. We had, like you said, multiple single target stuns on the side of Sin, but when you have everything just jumping on top of you, it's very hard to, play the game as the Sparrow. This game had to be won from Sin through the laning phase and through getting ahead through these picks and becoming strong enough to just fight on their own. But once, the early game unfolded, and Import did a decent job about getting some blinks early, but like you said, there's a lot of mobility on the side of Immune still. And when you have your blinks down, but you're not getting killed and you're not getting fed on this inside, it really just isn't going to work out well for you with the side of Immune and the comp that they drafted.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit kind of behind the scenes amongst us while the game was going, but who is supposed to protect that Sparrow in that game? There really isn't anybody to be able to stop against all of those dashes that were coming into it. That makes it so hard for Two Hands to be able to do what a Sparrow is supposed to do. Made it really easy for Neft on the Revenant to be able to do what Neft does when he gets this Revenant. So that does put Team Immune into our grand finals for the day. They will be fighting Team Veniven's Many Men for their chance to go straight into the grand finals, but it's not over for Sin just quite yet. They go down to that losers bracket, still have to win one more series to make it into that top 4, but I would say it's very likely that we see them continue. We're going to take a quick little break, and we will be back with the highlight series of this EU tournament so far, Team Veniven's Many Men taking on Team Immune. Don't go no.
The last Koru